Welcome to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, presented by FantasyGolfBag.com, your number one source for the most in-depth PGA Tour analysis in the daily fantasy and sports betting world. Each week, our experts will discuss everything you need to know, from the course preview and key stats to top plays, fades, and strategies. Whether golf betting, grinding out cash games, or playing for a big GPP win, our team has you covered. Let's get after it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I am your host, Redkacheek, joined today by Mr. Jacob Ray, goes by JkrayASU. And we'll be previewing the 2019 Sony Open, recapping a little bit of the Tournament of Champions, talking a little strategy for GPPs, talking a little giveaways, and some stuff in store later this week. But before we get all that going, Jacob, how's it going, man?
It's going good, Drew. How are you doing this fine evening?
I could be doing better. Like I mentioned, I think maybe last Monday or last Wednesday on the live stream on Twitch, Xander is my bugaboo from the 2018 season, and apparently it's transitioning into the 2019 season. I don't underestimate him. I think I overestimate him, but I never feel good about rostering him. He's never at a price that I love and never at odds that I feel great about. So I don't know. Maybe his name, Xander Schauffele, I just skip over it for some reason. But yeah, I had a little bit of Woodland, not as much as I anticipated. I thought he was going to be pretty popular, so faded that a bit and kicking myself for the ownership play. And I did not have any Justin Thomas, so kind of right off the top of the leaderboard, only had pieces of that. But what about you, man? How was your Tournament of Champions 2019 kickoff?
It wasn't great. But I was sitting in decent position going into Sunday. That seems to be the MO for me. I had Woodland and Leishman both, and Day had a really strong Sunday, so that boosted me. But Reed didn't do me any favors, and Poulter was actually sitting pretty well, and then I think he tripled like one of the last four holes, so that kind of knocked him out. Overall, it wasn't terrible. I mean, like you said, like we all suggested previously to the tournament lock, didn't go very heavy in it. So, yeah, not a bad loss, but
no, it's kind of frustrating too, because you're so excited to jump back into the season. You know, you only got 34 guys. They're all, probably 99% of them are all elite players. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of them are, at least at one point or another. But I mean, you really want to jump right into it, and you just can't. You got to restrain. I think I even texted you on Tuesday or Wednesday before the live stream was talking about, hey, man, these are the tournaments I'm looking to enter. Tell me I'm crazy, or tell me, give me some feedback. And I ended up tailoring that back just a tad. So the loss isn't as bad as it could have been. Actually, I think I actually won on FanDuel and
nice,
and lost very little on DraftKings. I think I maybe was down like $50. Like, it really wasn't that bad, but with everything moving around Friday and Saturday, you just don't know how Sunday's going to shake out. And then when Xander's moving up the leaderboard, shooting 11 under par, I had many lineups going the wrong direction. So I'm excited to move to a cut event and start to play some cash. It's like normal process week to week. I'm really excited to kind of kick it off this week.
I agree, man. Let's do it.
All right. Let's go ahead and jump into the course preview. We won't bend your ear too much on the Tournament of Champions. It is what it is. Fun event to watch. DFS, some people had some big weeks, some didn't. But, this week we get a really good event at the Sony Open. Plenty of course history. I don't remember where I saw the stat, but this was like one of the top 5 longest running golf tournaments on the PGA Tour at the same golf course, if I'm not mistaken. It is going to be hosted at Waialae Country Club It's in Honolulu, Hawaii. This was actually an event one of the first female golfers I think ever played. Michelle Wee, if you happen to remember that. It was here at Waialae.
Nice.
Yeah, and she almost made the cut. I think she missed by like one shot, crazy, against the men, and she was like 15 at the time. So Waialae Country Club, par 70, comes in right at 7,000 yards. These greens are Bermuda. It's really an overall short track. A lot of the good scoring opportunities are going to be had from your second shot in. So like driving is a priority. You want to get it in play. You can't just bomb it. And, there's a good number of holes that are dog legs. So you have to position your tee shot a certain distance off the tee to have a decent angle into the hole. I took a snapshot of some of the stats from last year. So given the course is so short, many guys won't be hitting drivers on all the holes. This tournament ranked as the 38th most difficult in birdie average. It averaged 4 birdies per round, or just under 4 birdies per round. Driving accuracy was the 14th most difficult, so definitely a premium on driving accuracy this week. And some guys should be hitting less than drivers, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem, but definitely something to consider. And we'll go over our stats here in a second. Green regulation, 69% green regulation percentage last year. That ranked 36. So again, short golf course shouldn't be very hard to hit these greens with 8 irons, 7 irons into these. Proximity to the hole, however, was 17th. So I think, again, just like we saw last week, the greens aren't terribly big this week, but because the course is shorter, hitting it close to the hole should be a priority if you're looking at your golfers. So, I don't know where you're at, Jacob, but I kind of looked at 125 to 150 and 150 to 175 just to get a feel for who's hitting those who's hitting the short irons and mid irons the best. And then lastly, and then I'll let you kind of fill in any gaps, but putting wise, the putting average ranked out 28, so kind of middle of the tour last year. I know, again, putting is so variable, and generally speaking, if you look at the top of the leaderboard, the guy that wins usually is near the top in strokes gained putting. So I did hear some things about last year's event. People were looking at strokes gained putting, but that's not something I'm really going to pay much attention to. I think there's really not a way to find a trend in putting as far as strokes gained putting. You got a guy like Bubba coming off last week with terrible, just an awful putting performance. I mean, I think I played him in showdowns every day thinking he's going to bounce back and just got worse, basically. So there's, maybe a reason to think that'll continue, but I honestly wouldn't pay too much mind to strokes gained putting. And that pretty much wraps up as far as the course. I will say, before I get to you, Jacob, this is a Seth Rayner design. Generally speaking, these greens are tough to putt on. The emphasis is on the second shot. They usually have tiers in the green, so they'll put a pin somewhere, and your distance control is very, very, very important. So, I've played Seth Rayner a few times here in Florida, and it is very tricky. Like off the tee, it's not long. It's really not that narrow. I think maybe the dog legs create a tougher driving angle. You kind of have to hit it straight, but then have to hit it short of the dog leg, obviously. And then the second shot is the key. So I think this will definitely be the test in Hawaii. You've seen some really low scores, though. So if the guys are playing their tee shot smart, they should have plenty of wedge and mid-iron opportunities. And if they're making putts, they should finish, 21, 22 under. And then kind of the last thing I'll mention, the winning score here the last 5 years was 17 under, 27 under by Justin Thomas, 20 under, 23 under, and 17 under. So you should definitely see plenty of birdies. So I'll kick it over to you, Jacob, if I missed anything, or what's your thoughts on the overall golf course?
Yeah, so just a few things like you said about the greens. They are Bermuda. They're pretty much average tour size. They're about 6,400 square feet in size. So that's not really big, not really small, about middle of the pack. They are they typically roll right around 11 on the stent meter, which again is just tour average. So not too fast, not too slow. For some, that might be a little bit slower. And then I did read somewhere that they might try and speed them up a little bit if they do think that they're a little too slow.
Yeah, I think just talking about the putting, the speed of the greens, the main difference maker in courses like down in South Florida and Hawaii for sure is the wind. And it looks like Thursday, I don't have Friday up, but like Thursday, looks like it's going to be like 8 to 12 miles per hour, so not too bad. So like if that's in the forecast, they should be able to speed these greens up a bit. Again, I wouldn't pay it too much attention as far as the green speed goes. But yeah, it just, if you think about right on the coast, if it gets 25, 30 miles per hour like we saw last week, the greens can't be rolling like they do at, for drastic example, Augusta, right? It's just, the balls literally would not stay on the green. So like you said, I think they will speed them up a little bit with the way the forecast looks. It should be much better weather than last week. But yeah, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the green speed.
Yeah. And I think in addition to Thursday, I think the rest of the week looks really fantastic. Not a ton of wind either. And that might just be the only reason that they elect to speed them up a little bit. But
should be perfect weather from what I'm seeing, like mid-70s, 10 miles per hour wind.
Yeah, like
Hawaii. I mean, playing for $1 million is basically a milli maker with 150 people. How good can it get?
Yeah, pretty good odds. I'll take those.
Love that.
So you were alluding to the high scoring. So over that course in time, the average has been 21 under. And then the average cut is 2 under. So just some interesting tidbits. Very
good. I will make note. Do you remember? Do you happen to remember what happened last year here? Anything ring a bell as something special or crazy?
Are you referring to Mr. Patton Kazire?
No, that is crazy. No, I didn't even fill you in on this. I really wanted to surprise you. It does not have to do with Patton Kazire. Even though at that point in time, I don't think that was the craziest thing in the world. But the thing I'm referring to is last year, they had a little missile crisis over there in Hawaii. And the PGA Tour, the Golf Channel video people were like rioting, or not rioting. They were...
They're freaking.
Yeah, they didn't want to work for the Golf Channel anymore because of the wages or whatever. I don't know what the deal was and what got resolved. But yeah, how quickly we forget the missile scare last year was at this tournament in Hawaii. I thought that was pretty funny because I remember that was such a big deal, and now I didn't even remember. I didn't even remember that even happened.
I know. I completely forgot it, and I was reading a preview about it. And as soon as you said it, I was like, that was crazy. And they were like, is this real? And then people started freaking out. Like all the golfers were posting pictures of like empty streets, and it was like people going crazy.
Yeah.
So hopefully that won't happen again.
Yeah, hopefully not. But yeah, I thought I'd bring that up just to reminisce a bit about last year because, man, the year flew by and something like that was so major. Now it's like it didn't even happen. Crazy. So
yeah.
So what stats are you looking at? We talked about the golf course. It's a little shorter. There should be a little emphasis on driving accuracy, I would think, and obviously, stroke gain approach, more or less every single week is always a priority. But what are you kind of keying in on as your general, strategy this week as far as golfers and stats goes?
So like you said, tee to green and approach are kind of the standard here. I'm looking at par 4 scoring. I'm looking at birdie or better percentage. I'm on the fence between fairways gained and good drives. I know we had a conversation about that earlier today, but I still haven't quite decided the weight that I'm going to put on those, or if it's just going to be one or the other. They both obviously signify, more accurate hitters. Good drives doesn't necessarily mean a fairway hit, but it's it can be 2 steps off the fairway, but it means a green irregulation hit from that area. So I think they're both worth looking at. And then deciding what proximity I'm going to look at. I'm thinking in my head, these guys, most of the bigger guys are going to at least club down. Some of the shorter guys are still going to be able to hit driver, but I'm trying to figure out how much they're going to have in on most of these holes. There's only, I think, 1 or 2 holes that are par 4s greater than 450. I know number 1 is like 480, but most everything else is 465 and under for a par 4. So is that 125 to 150? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, that one kind of stood out to me. I don't know how. I think that's like a common yardage that a lot of guys will have. Like that's the majority of the shots into these greens will be that yardage. But I'm not really keying in on any specific yardage, to be honest. I think these guys, the way this golf course sets up, just because it's 7,000 yards, they should be able to lay up to a certain yardage that they're most comfortable with. So like, just because the majority of shots was 125 to 150, let's just say, like for me personally, if I had an opportunity to lay up to like 135, that'd be a perfect, nice, smooth pitching wedge. So I think most of these guys are laying up in that 130 to 140 range. That's probably why you see the number of those shots so high. I think other people that, can feel a little more confident, hit the 120 yards or 115, they'll do that. You get a guy like Ches Reavie, he might have 155 in. So I'm not really paying too much attention to proximity. It seems more of a position golf course to me than like last week where guys were just bombing it 85% of the time. Yeah. So I definitely see that stat popping from the last couple of years as far as like that's the common distance, but I'm not really considering that too much. I think that's just the majority of people had that yardage in.
Okay.
So for me, I am looking at strokes gained approach. That's probably my biggest. I really want guys that are hitting their irons consistently well. At a decent rate. It's so early in this part of the season. There's a large gap from the last couple of events in the fall. So looking back, 6 months and then also looking at 12 months just to get a feel for these guys. And then looking for guys that played really well tee to green here the last 2 to 3 years. I think that's very helpful. Like I said, it's a position golf course. It seems off the tee. So guys can potentially play this really well, and some other ones that have been hitting it well. Tee to green, this might not just be their type of golf course. A comparable golf course I heard was from last year was Colonial. So as you know, Colonial, that's completely a tee shot position, and then it's all about the second shot. So I'm anticipating a lot of the same type of players doing well here that played well at Colonial the last couple of years. And I am weighing course history quite a bit, so that kind of goes in with the positional, and guys that have played well here in the past will continue to do so. So, yeah, strokes gained approach, fairways gained, I thought was very important. I did look at strokes gained par 4 scoring just because I think the way the par 4s are set up, that is key. And then I added in, we kind of talked about it last week, I think on the podcast, but strokes gained total, adding in, guys that are hitting it well tee to green, but including the full, strokes gained tee to green plus putting to get a feel for who's actually playing well overall. So I am throwing in strokes gained total this week. I think recent form will help. And then one thing I'll note, so like looking at, I haven't done a ton of back testing. This was something I thought about probably like the week before Christmas, and we just didn't have enough time. I think you and I were planning too many things for me to go and dig into this. But I found a unique trend last year, and this may or may not be, evident to everybody, but I'll just throw it out there. You're more than willing to go check it out. But like, if you look at a majority of the tournaments and look at the tournament immediately following, seeing who played well there, many times the next year, the previous event, the guy plays well. So, for example, Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland finished tied for 7th last year, and he almost won last week's event. I did the same thing with like the Arnold Palmer at Bay Hill, the Valero, Texas, I think was another one. Like there's a number of events where if you look at the result immediately following a tournament, and then if you look forward to the next year, go back 1 week, they tend to play well. So I'm going to use that a bit this year. So like I said, I didn't dive into it completely, but definitely starting to see that pop up more and more. Granted, last week was like 34 guys, but I think there's something to be said. So if you look ahead to next week's event, look at the previous year's results, and you might start to see a little bit of a trend. So keep that in mind.
That's interesting.
Because I think timing during the season is key. It's for elite guys, it's not as much, but like last year, Brian Stewart played well. I think if I look back, Brian Stewart in 2017 here, he finished 45th, then finished 4th. Like, not bad for a guy that's not known as a great player, finishing top 5. So I think there is a little bit of an interesting dynamic with timing during the year and when guys play very well. So whether it's, practicing at home and they just get in a groove at a certain time, or they start to get in a vibe at a certain tournament and they start picking up steam. So definitely keep an eye out for that.
Okay.
All right, Jacob. Let's go ahead and get into DraftKings 10K and down. But before we do that, I got to bring in a buddy, and I think you know who this is. We're going to bring in Mr. Chris Ferreter. He's a premium member for the Fantasy Golf Bag. Dude, he hit like $2,800 yesterday off the Xander win, and I thought it would be so cool to hear about his sweat, Jacob. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. At least somebody was benefiting from that Xander. It sure wasn't me.
Me either. Gary would have been fine. Rory probably would have been fine. But yeah, Xander, not so much. But I got Chris on the line. So Chris, how's it going, dude? I got to imagine you're feeling pretty good today.
What's up, guys? Yeah, pretty good Monday for me. Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man.
No problem.
So how was the sweat yesterday? I know, tee times didn't start till 3 o'clock pretty much. The leaders didn't go off till much later than that. What was your sweat like? And from my understanding, give me a little background here, but you took a parlay from Adon7X on Twitter, and it was like 2 or 3 outrights, or 2 or 3 spreads, and then you parlayed that with Xander and also Gary Woodland. So you really had 2 shots at some big money. And then you had to wait 8 days, I think, to see who won the Tournament of Champions. How'd this go?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if you guys follow Adon on Twitter.
Absolutely,
but if you do,
he's a must.
Yeah.
He's a must.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially during bowl season. So I started, throughout bowl season, I was playing some of his plays and doing well. And then I realized, the Tournament of Champions is coming up. Why don't I try parlaying these games with some of the guys that I like? So Xander was there. I think he was like 22-1 odds or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So New Year's Day was the UCF game, the Washington game, and the Texas game. And Adon was huge on the Texas game and big on the Washington game. So I was like, all right, this is a good time to try and juice some of these guys up. So I played Gary, Xander, along with I think Kuchar, with Texas and Washington covering the spread. And I don't know if you guys watched that game. The funny thing about that game is Washington was getting like blown out, right? I mean, couldn't stop Ohio State, couldn't do anything. So I was like, oh man, now I'm going to lose these guys. So then I took Texas and Xander with the spread. And Washington came back with a minute and a half left and backdoor covered. Because I think it was 6.
Yeah.
And they were up 5, and they went for 2, something like that. And they went for 2, and Ohio State actually picked off the 2-point conversion and almost house called it, which would have blown the spread for me there. So I ended up on a double parlay with Xander, and then I had the one with Gary. So going into it, my panic was Rory, right? Because Rory was there. We all know.
Oh, yeah.
Rory's an elite talent, just behind Gary. So I think I was texting you, can Gary hold on to this? Panicking, trying to find a way to get on Rory. And actually, luckily, with the late tee time, I got on the Chargers money line, and I took the under in the Philly game. along with Rory. So I got a little piece of Rory.
Oh, good.
And so it was a little less of a sweat, but I had no clue that Xander was going to do what he did. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, so does this like we throw out our betting card each week, but like last season, we had some pretty good success, but how often are you trying to tack on to these outrights and juice it up? I know like this week Justin Thomas is like 5 or 6 to 1, and it's really tough to bet that, but maybe if you threw on you had the Philadelphia from this weekend or whatever it is, and you throw on 2 or 3 teams and then add a parlay with an outright, it's a decent odds. How often are you looking to do that, if any, like during the season? Is that like a regular thing for you?
I mean, normally I'll just take the odds as they're given in a normal, whatever it is, 140-man field. They're usually pretty generous, right? Except for the favorites. So if you love a guy like Justin Thomas this week, then it's something to look into. But I figured with the small field, 30 guys or whatever, it kind of made a little bit more sense to do that because the odds there was no real value in it. But you start juicing them up, and I think I had Xander at like 64 to 1 by the end of it. And I had Gary at like 90 to 1 by the time it was done. So in a regular tournament, like if I love Justin Thomas this week, one of the guys I'm actually looking at doing it with, and I'm actually doing it right now with this Bama game, is trying to get on Spieth. So trying to get him he's 14 to 1 right now, try and juice him up to 29 to 1, but it doesn't look good right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's some serious odds this week. It was tough. You got any outrights already, or are you just kind of waiting to see how everything plays out in the next couple days and then figure out what you want to do?
Yeah, with the late finish last night, I'm still celebrating my my $2,500 win with the X-Man. So I haven't dug a ton into it. We played Draftkings light last week because of the no cut.
Right.
So I'll probably do a little bit more on Draftkings this week, and then I like to kind of throw in the bets to sort of, guys I'm not playing in Draftkings that I'll bet to keep it interesting. So we'll see.
It's a great way.
We'll see what we go with this week. You got any leans so far or what?
No, man. I'm the first initial looks were long odds guys because, man, there's some really good ones deep. Really good ones deep. So I'm not sure yet. We'll see how this podcast goes. See if JK Ray can persuade me a little bit. But yeah, man, nothing too early. Like, honestly, all these guys look great. I mean, the middle tier, 50, probably 45 to like 80 look stacked. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, you get some. Really, anything 33 and on is interesting here.
I know.
So
it feels good. It feels good to get back to this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, a cut event coming back. We'll get through the podcast and listen to you guys tomorrow on the way into work, and then I'll start hammering the books and hammering DK.
That's right. So real quick before we let you go, how did you sweat it last night? You run around the room, you throw back some whiskey. What's your go-to sweat mentality?
Oh, man, so I couldn't get I couldn't get it on TV. I couldn't figure out why. I guess it's my cable provider or whatever. I couldn't watch it. So I'm sitting on the couch as my wife is watching TV, and I have my headphones plugged into my laptop, listening to PGA radio, screaming at the top of my lungs as X-Man's eagling holes and barely missing eagles. But at that point, I wanted X to win, right? Because I had 1,800 on Gary and 24 something on X. So at that point, I wanted him to win. So as he was coming back, it was amazing. I was just pissed I couldn't watch it, but no, it was fun. It was a Sunday night, got to get up and go to work on Monday, so I'm not really, drinking and going nuts for it. But it was fun to sweat it out and pray that Rory didn't make a move or anybody else I wasn't on. So it worked out in my favor.
No, that's awesome, man. Congrats again. Jacob, you got anything for him? This was exciting. I didn't have anything I was really sweating. So everything I had definitely went backwards on Sunday, as typical no cut events for me apparently. But super stoked for you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and looking forward to the cut event this week. And yeah, these no cut events on DK don't seem to be very, very good to me either. So, looking forward to it.
No, I just need to start max entering everything. Do like 750 lineups and just. I mean, how could you lose
For
there,
real?
right? Unless I hit like the 25 center for like $100, then you're really screwed.
Yeah, the quarter arcade.
Yeah, I just pass on that. I couldn't live with myself if I won that. I could have put that
Yeah,
in the $10,
exactly.
you know?
You hit the nuts on that
Yeah.
one. Oh,
Dude, you wouldn't hear from me for like 2 weeks. I'd be pissed.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, man. Hopefully you stick around the rest of this week. We'll do another live stream on Wednesday, so you can parlay this into a little Ping hybrid we got going out on Wednesday night for a giveaway. So
There you go.
I mean, who doesn't need a Ping hybrid?
Yeah, I already got my golf balls. Now I need something to hit them with.
I know. I still got to send those out actually. Well, side note.
Side note.
I'll
No
get those
worries.
out tomorrow for you. But yeah, man. Hopefully you tune into the live stream Wednesday. This podcast will be out tomorrow as we're recording. But man, Chris, thank you so much for tuning in and then coming on to talk about your Xander sweat for what, $40 to 2,400, something like that.
Yeah, $40 to $24.50 or so.
Dude, awesome, man. So
Hey,
thank you
Chris,
so much, man.
I got one
Yeah.
last thing. Chris, one last question.
Let's hear it.
I don't know if you looked at DK or not, but one guy, 10K range, who you go with?
One guy, 10K range. Well, let's see. What's Gary
10K
Woodland
left.
at?
He's a 10-8. He's expensive this
So
week.
what's his ownership gonna be? 95%.
Oh no, he's going to withdraw for the funeral.
He is going to
Oh
withdraw.
yeah, you're probably right. I'm going 10K or above. I'm going Speed this week.
All right.
All right, I see.
I think he will be lower owned. Unless
Yeah.
guys like you keep talking him up, I think people will listen now.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm worried about it. I shouldn't have given away my my advantage there.
Yeah.
But I like Speed. I think he's hopefully been getting his mind right, and he'll make some noise this week.
I like it, man. I like it. Well, Chris, man, thank you so much for coming on the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast and talking about your huge weekend. And we'll talk to you later this week, man.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
All right,
See you
man.
later.
Good luck. See ya.
All right, bye.
All right. Jacob, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
All right. That was good. Thanks again to Chris for coming on the show. Again, that was super cool. We basically witnessed that in Slack, the Fantasy Golf Bag Slack, him sweating it out. And I think he might have asked, I'm not sure how many times he asked it, but, does Rory have a chance through the front nine? And then Xander started tearing away, back-to-back eagles, I think. And he's like, well, guys, I got Xander to win 2,400, and I got Gary Woodland to win, 2,200. So I feel pretty good about it. I was like, dude, don't jinx it. But
He said, I'm not sweating it too much.
no, that's awesome. So again, thanks to Chris for coming on the podcast. Good luck this week. Good luck to the rest of the year. It's a great way to start, no doubt. So, let's go ahead and jump into some Draftkings, some pricing, and we'll talk about our top plays in each tier. If you have a fade, more than able to throw that out there. But again, we'll have our live stream on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. That is the planned time. We will talk about the podcast, any changes we had from this initial recording through our last lineup tweaks on Wednesday night. And we'll talk some ownership projections. We'll do some giveaways, kind of like I mentioned to Chris. We'll be giving away all the same stuff we did last week. Got golf balls, shirts, hats, a little bit of golf equipment. And then the big one this last week, as far as partnerships goes, this week, we'll be giving away a Ping G400 hybrid. So a 3 hybrid, 19 degree, Tour 85C shaft, golf pride grip, the full whammo. So pretty excited to give that away Wednesday. You like that description there, Jacob?
Yeah, that was interesting.
I didn't know what else to say. It is a good club, though. I'm kind of upset that we have to give it away. We can't keep it. But tune in. Keep a lookout on Twitter. But, tune in Wednesday night on Twitch. You can find it'll be on my channel. You can go to twitch.tv/Redkacheek, and you can find that at 8 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, we'll post it on Twitter. But, we'll have golf balls, hats, shirts, and, of course, the Ping hybrid giveaway on Wednesday night. So keep that in mind. So let's move into DraftKings, Jacob. I mean, this field is, man, it's probably one of the best fields I've seen, or at least I remember, as far as this Hawaii swing after the Tournament of Champions. It's tough. Like, I'm really excited to jump back into full cut because I think there's so many good plays. People could go the wrong direction, or it's not very hard to get off the chalk. If there is going to be chalk, there may not be. But yeah, let's switch it around this week. Let's start 10K and above, and I'll lead off with you.
All right. I'm gonna throw a curveball out here for you, but I might fade this entire range.
Okay. And are you, like you mentioned last week, because you're more of like a single lineup, or you'll do 2 to 3 max. You're not usually doing like 50 lineups and stuff.
Oh yeah. No.
How many are you looking to this week? When you say you're going to fade the 10K and above, are you talking like you're going to build one lineup and fade them, or like if you build 5 lineups, you're not going to play any of these guys?
Yeah, no, that is, thanks for clarifying. So I'm playing one lineup this week, and I will probably fade all of them. It was funny, that's the first thought that came to my head when you were talking the intro into this price range. I just, nobody really stands out to me. Certainly all these guys have their positives, right? Thomas, JT, Bryson, Gary, Leishman, they all played tournament champions last week. They all played well. But Gary Woodland's going to be very highly owned, and rightly so.
Is he going to withdraw? Well, let's just stop you right there. What's the idea behind him withdrawing this week? I've heard a lot of it, and I think there's good reason behind it. Maybe we hear that on Tuesday. I don't know, but what's the thought behind him withdrawing? Even though you're not going to play him, but just for the audience's sake.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's merit to considering that. I would probably give it honestly a 50-50 chance. I mean,
for context, people that somehow missed this, but like last week, he was leading after 3 rounds, and I think news actually maybe came out on Friday evening that his grandmother had passed away. So, basically the narrative was, he's playing hard for his grandmother. He's got a heavy heart, and I honestly thought that was going to be enough for him to win. And if he had won, I think he'd be already withdrawn. But the idea is there's going to be a funeral at some point this week or next week. He's going to have to withdraw to go be at the funeral. So There's a chance, we're recording this Monday night, there's a chance he withdraws. And honestly, I don't know how I feel. Like if he's confirmed going to play on Thursday, I still don't know if I would play him if he's really popular. But if there's rumors that he would withdraw, I think he would be lower owned. Then I don't even know what I would do, because his history here is great. His recent form's great. So it's really kind of scary for me, to be honest. So I might just avoid it, but it's scary either way.
If you're doing multiple lineups, like 10 lineups, then regardless of the news, I think it's okay to play him.
In a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In maybe like 2.
Yep.
Right. But I'm not getting close to that. I'd say 1 to 3. I wouldn't get near it. Just because of that uncertainty. And let's see that.
So since you're fading the 10K, I'll go ahead and jump in, and we can move down to the 9K. But like, to cap it off on Woodland, like the reason why this is a weird situation for, he's coming off the second place last week, played great, and now there's fears that he would withdraw. And hopefully we would get that news on Tuesday or Wednesday before the week. Yeah, I'm surprised coming from like a playing background that he wouldn't have showed up today, or he's recouping from the 4 days of golf last weekend and he's ready to withdraw and go home. We haven't got that news, so that makes me think he's going to play, unless they just haven't scheduled the funeral or something. But for context of why it's a really tough situation is his last 2 finishes, finishing off the fall swing and then the Tournament Champions, he finished 8th and then 2nd. Before that, he had a 5th, a 2nd, and a 10th. and then a 41st. And then at this golf course, the last 4 years, he's finished 3rd, 13th, 6th, and 7th. Like, dude, he's a stone cold lock if you believe in recent form, if you believe in course history, if you believe in stats. Like, he's the guy to play, especially in cash. But like you said, it's a iffy situation. So that's kind of why we're bringing this up and kind of hitting on it, because I think that's where people, if he's still supposed to play on Wednesday evening, people are going to be really scared to, like, they won't know what to do.
Yeah.
Do they go off of the rumors or not? So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not sure on that. I love him this week. I think he'll be popular, and if so, I'd probably fade him, but it's really hard to look away from Gary Woodland. As far as the others in the 10K, then we can get on with the rest of this pricing down below. Justin Thomas at 11.4 I think's a bit much. Bryson has only had one showing here, hasn't played great, and last week Tee to Green was god awful. And he's a longer hitter. I feel like he would benefit from a little bit longer golf course. So I'm really not sold on Bryson this week either. So, Chris mentioned Jordan Spieth. I can kind of get behind that as far as the GPP goes, but honestly, man, I think I'm with you as far as fading the 10K. I think most people will feel like they have to play a 10K and above, and I like so many people kind of in the lower 9s and the 8s especially, that I might just avoid the 10K with you. So I think we can kind of agree on the 10K is not the best spot to kind of start your lineup.
That surprises me. I thought you were gonna hit on JT and hit on a couple other guys, but
I'll probably have some JT I'm not sure how many GPPs I'll play, but I could definitely see me playing some Bryson. I wouldn't play Mark Leishman at that price, to be honest. And I could definitely see playing some Jordan Spieth, but as far as like optimal lineups and like playing smart, I think starting below the 10K is A, smart, and B, it's going to actually probably give you an advantage as far as ownership goes. So, I apologize for hitting on the 10K and above too much, but it's interesting this week, man. I really don't feel strongly. Like, maybe if, there was a DJ and it was a DJ course and he's 11K, then it's like, yeah, I'm definitely playing DJ. But there's just so many good plays, man. Like we said with Chris, the odds are stacked in that mid-range. I think going balance this week is going to be pretty solid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I've got a lot of, I was telling you this before, but I've got a lot of guys in the 8K that I'm interested in and 9 as well. So I think we can just hammer those two price ranges and cover a lot of picks.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So I apologize for hitting on the 10K too much and talking about Gary Woodland for a little bit. So going down to the 9K, there's not that many in the 9K, and then we get to the 8s and the 7s, and it's just loaded. But so 9K, you got Cameron Champ, Patrick Reed, Cameron Smith, Matsuyama, Griot, Casey, and Kisner. So kind of out of this group, I'll kind of give you my thoughts on it. I think this is a better golf course for Cameron Champ. I know he lost a ton of strokes tee to green, so I'm not totally opposed to playing him. I think this is really a decent fit for him. Mm-hmm. And so I'm okay at 9,900. It seems very expensive, but the way he's been playing, it's definitely, it's worth it for sure. But I kind of like Cameron Champ at 9,900. He may be overlooked slightly just because he's so close to the 10K and above. People, if they start with JT, they just can't build with him. Mm-hmm. So I do like some Cameron Champ. And the other one in there is Mr. Patrick Reed. He really disappointed me last week, but man, I got to imagine he bounces back. He's been so awful tee to green, but again, this is less than driver. I feel like he should benefit a little bit. At the Tournament Champions, he finished almost last. He lost strokes approach and putting. Terrible. Yeah. But yeah, at this golf course, I feel like maybe this would be a bit of a better track for him to position off the tee, hit some decent irons, and, finish top 15. So, It's iffy. I think Cameron Champ's probably my favorite out of that group. I like a few down in the 8Ks, to be honest, but 9K, I'd probably lean Cameron Champ, and that's about it. There's just nothing else that jumps completely off the page to me.
Okay. I was actually going to say that Reed is might be the least owned in this range, just because of his performance last week and his price this week.
Yep.
So that might be definitely a sharp lean there. Kind of like it.
It's scary.
I
can tell in your voice you don't love it.
Well, I like
and I don't
it
love it either
for a
but,
GPP point of view.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be in my cash lineup. GPP only. I think he's a world class player, whether you like his attitude or not. This could be a good bounce back spot.
I think Champ and Smith both are getting talked up a decent amount. I think Cam Smith has had, what did he win, the Australian Open, and then he's played pretty well coming into this. I think he hasn't played super recent, but he's had a good fall swing. Matsuyama, I think he'll always get some attention. But really, my biggest interest is in this low 9K at 9,200 Griot and at 9,000 even. Who lit the Kiz? That's all about some Kisner, man. You can't deny that course history with Kisner, right? Last 3 years, 25, 4, and 4.
He sets up good for a South Ranger design, to be honest. I'm not sold on Kisner. I think he's a tremendous player, but I'm not one that typically gets behind Kisner just because I don't think he has a ton of win equity. And at 9,000, I think that's a bit expensive for me, that he needs to have a really strong chance to win. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that he can't. I mean, he's obviously won on tour before, but yeah, I don't love him at that price. He's more of like a $7,700 guy or $7,300 guy. 9K is a bit rich.
All the more reason to play him.
Potentially. I just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, what about Griot?
Griot I liked from on paper, but his course history here, he does not suit the golf course that great. He's made the cut the 2 times he's played it. I would lean
33.
Yeah, that's not that good he's made cuts, but it's not good. We'll get to a guy here in a minute that's played this golf course good that I'm about to be all over. But, Griot, I'll probably play some Griot, but he's not going to be one of my core plays by any stretch of imagination.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
for the 9K, that's all I've got. Those are 2 guys I'm pretty high on in that range.
Okay. And then, let's see. Yeah, Matsuyama, I'm definitely not. He drives the ball so poorly. Even though he shouldn't hit a ton of drivers, I think I mentioned this to someone earlier today, and Hideki was one of the first ones I was like, he's not my cup of tea this week. So I will say that his iron play has been pretty solid, but he needs to be in position off the tee, and I'm not sure I trust that. So
yeah, I agreed there.
All right, let's drop down into the 8K range. I'll let you lead off. I'm sure you got a decent number here. If you're fading the 10K, this has got to be where you fall, because if you don't, you're going to be leaving a ton of salary, and I don't think that's the smartest decision this week.
Oh yeah, this is my bread and butter range right here, and I'll start it off with my go-to guy, Abraham Answer, at 8,800. He just jumps off the page at me statistically. And then, you look at his current form coming in, really, really solid. Outside of I think he made the cut at the CJ Cup and then finished dead last. But bracketed by that, he had a 5th at the CIMB, a 4th at the Shriners, 21st OHL. And I'm not sure about his course history.
He missed the cut last year.
Okay, so I know we're leaning course history, and actually I have a question for you about that when we get down to the 7s. But
all right,
I think I'm I think I'm willing to overlook that. I just feel really strongly about him. A couple other guys in the 8Ks that I'm interested in. Chill played really well coming down the stretch. Charles Howell III
That's
at
a good nickname.
Tournament of Champions last week. And he might have found his mojo after that win.
He switched equipment, man. Titleist. Let's go.
That's true. And he just looked really sharp. He doesn't, stat-wise, pop a ton. But I could definitely, the trend of those who play well at Tournament of Champions, I think there was some statistic out there where, top 10 or top 15 at Tournament of Champions continue on to, finish T20 or better in the Sony. I could definitely see him in this field doing pretty well. Got some interest in Kyle Stanley, Zach Johnson. He's got awesome course history here. He fits this mold perfectly for this course. 8,600, I feel like he might be chalky just because of that course history and that price. And then lastly for me, Adam Scott, I've got some decent interest in at 8,300. I'm fairly certain he will be chalky as well, being that cheap. And I think that he's certainly not the Adam Scott Master winner yet.
No.
But he is playing much better towards the end of the FedEx Cup last year and the fall swing this year. He finished, PGA was third, fifth at Northern Trust, and then didn't do too great at the final two tournaments, but started off the fall swing really solid with a 10th and 18th. So, I do like Adam Scott a lot. Really solid tee to green guy.
Yeah.
And, these greens, aren't super fast. They're not terribly undulated. So I could see, the one area he struggles with is putter not being a huge deciding factor for him this week.
Okay. I only got a couple in this range. The Charles Howell play, I'm all over. I really liked him last week. He lost some strokes on approach, but it's tough to tell where he lost those strokes. So on a shorter golf course, similar to the RSM to some degree, I think this is a great track for him. And obviously he's shown it. I'm surprised no one mentioned his course history like they do Zach Johnson at the John Deere. But you got the last 10 years or 9 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 10s in 10 years. Yes, sign me up for some Charles Howell. Coming off a win in a 14th last week. New equipment, playing really solid tee to green. I think this is a really good track for him. The finishes for Kyle Stanley you mentioned, that scares me a bit. So I'm not anticipating playing much Kyle Stanley. It's he's had some good showings here, so maybe I need to look deeper into that. But this doesn't seem like his type of golf course. So I'll look more into that. But you do like some Kyle Stanley, so I will make that a note. So the other two that I like is Mr. Zach Johnson and Matt Kuchar, and that'll kind of finish off this 8K range. I know Adam Scott's real popular, at least so far it seems that way, and I'll probably play some Adam Scott. I don't mind that, but I don't think he should be as hyped up as he seems to be getting. And Bubba Watson lost, I think, 54 strokes putting last week, so I don't feel like I'm going to go back to that anytime soon. Lost enough money. And, I really like Zach Johnson and Charles Howell. I feel like those are no-brainers. Don't overthink it. Because, we mentioned, even though he's got a new caddy this week, but, when Damon Green came on the podcast late last year, he mentioned that Zach Johnson has courses that just fit him. When he goes to them, he knows he's going to play well, blah, 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 especially wedge courses. And this is a wedge course. There's no emphasis on driving distance. So I fully anticipate Zach Johnson continuing his trend of top 10s and top 15s here. So he's probably my favorite play in the 8K range, but I'm very interested in Howell. And then I'll just add on a little bit of Adam Scott and maybe some Russell Knox, but not loving it.
Ooh, Russell Knox.
Very low.
Nice.
Very low. GPPs.
Okay.
I think Russell Knox actually has some popularity. I think he was popular last year, given he's got a little bit of a price jump from last year. I think he'll still get a little bit of traction. So I might fall off that a bit, but for a limited exposure, I don't mind it. But yeah. Any final thoughts on?
Yeah, one last thing. I know you mentioned your hesitation in Kyle Stanley, and I was just looking at his history here, and let me just hit you with this, and then we'll go. So his last 4 finishes were 10th, 36th, 41st, and 13th. So, 10th, 36th, 13th, right? And 2 of those, or the one last year, he lost strokes gained approach. Years ago, he also lost strokes gained approach in those same categories. His last 10 tournaments, he's gained a stroke and a half approach. In his last 5 tournaments, he's gaining 2.6 strokes approach. So potentially the area where he struggled with, and he still finished 10th last year, is an area that he is strong in currently, or as current as he could be.
Well, I'll point out that last year he finished 10th, and he still gained 6 strokes putting. So that considered, maybe he should have been 25th place, which would be somewhat in line with his previous finishes. So even though he lost strokes approach, I think he made up for it more than enough with his putting. So not to argue with my co-host on Kyle Stanley form at the Sony Open, but yeah, I think I'll dig in a little bit more. Maybe I'll bring that up on the live stream Wednesday, but and see where I fall. But
fair enough.
I mean, he looks like he's played really well here. And maybe his driving irons and like his positional tee shots are really good, but I don't know. Seems like I could go a different direction in the 8K and feel better about it, and then move down from there. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right.
7K, the honeypot. There's probably 25 guys in here.
Yeah, it's a ton.
Yeah. So, kind of looking at the top range at the 7K, I think I'm going to go back to Mr. Ian Poulter here. I'll go ahead and touch on probably the obvious people that, if you're looking at course history, you got Pat Gazire and Brian Harman. I will be passing on both. I do not anticipate playing, especially Brian Harman. Pat and Gazire, I'm up in the air about. I feel like he'll be popular again off last week. But yeah, very interested in Mr. Ian Poulter. I was high on him last week, and he really played pretty well until the final day and just didn't. I mean, calm conditions, and you got guys shooting 11 under par. You got to do a little better than 2 under par. So I think this is a great golf course for Mr. Ian Poulter. So I'm going to continue with him. Scott Piercy, I was interested in last week, and he just didn't do much. I think he lost a little bit of strokes putting, but nothing bad. Lost strokes on approach. He's a guy, though, that typically grinds out these shorter golf courses really well. You look at his last couple of finishes, 5th, 10th, 6th, and then 19th last week. So I do like some Scott Piercy in the 7K range. I think this is a decent track for him. He actually ranks out 2nd in good drives gained and fairways gained. So hitting a lot of fairways, and if he misses fairways, it apparently isn't by much. So I do like that. Oh, I'm sorry. That was Ches Reavie. Scott Piercy is 29th and 18th. So I guess I should like Ches Reavie, apparently. Do you like Ches Reavie?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I think this is a good time of year for him. So he's on my list, but he's not on the high side. So yeah, those are the few that I like. I'm interested in Keegan Bradley, so I'm kind of curious your thoughts. I have higher respect for Keegan Bradley than most do, I think. And he's never played this golf course very well. But what's your thoughts on Keegan? Are you looking at course history and concerned?
Yes.
Okay,
actually, I am. And you already answered my question in the 7Ks about course history because it was Brian Harman.
Yeah, pass.
Do you forego form and statistics and just say his course history is awesome, so let's roll with him?
There's a feel about it because, like, I think if you wanted to weigh course history over recent form, I think recent form trumps it. And in his situation, you know, his course history looks great, and he definitely can play well here again. But if I'm looking at this from experience, from a playing background, you know, if I go into a tournament that I've really played well at, yeah, I get a little bit of a bump. But if I'm playing bad, I'm still playing bad. So I would rather just avoid the situation at 7,900. If he was 6,900, then I think he would probably sucker me in and probably miss the cut and burn my cash lineup or something. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of a gut aspect when it comes to course history versus recent form, to some degree. Because, like, obviously his recent form is god-awful, and his course history is unbelievable. So there's a little bit of a blend there where you got to make a decision. So I would rather take the recent form on him. There's some other people, like you talk about, you know, Patrick Reed, who's played bad here, one time missed the cut, and his recent form is a little iffy. I would rather, you know, play the lower ownership and take a chance on Patrick Reed. So kind of two ways to look at that.
Interesting.
Are you going to play him?
Harman or Reed?
Harman.
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just don't. I don't see the reason.
Yeah, with my one lineup, I have two guys from this range, and they're not Brian Harman. So, like you said, Keegan, I think you do like him more than the average DFS PGA player.
Yeah. And it pains me to say that, to be honest. Like, I used to. Funny story, real quick. I think my second to last Q school attempt or third to last Q school attempt to get my PGA Tour card was down in West Palm Beach, and he caddied for a guy. He caddied for, like, his old roommate from college up in Rhode Island or Connecticut or something. Like, we walked by him going from 10th tee to his guy was going to the 10th tee, we were going to the first tee. And I was like, this guy's on the PGA Tour, but he's out here caddying? Like, he must not be good. And then as I started to follow him more and more, I was like, this guy is good. Like, I mean, he's very up and down, no doubt. He's streaky, but I have a good deal of respect for, like, the kind of player he is to win a PGA championship. Like, he's a good player. So when he gets that cheap, it's almost, you know, I feel like there's more talent there than just the course history behind it. So.
And coming with these personal, hand-on hot takes, making me rethink everything.
And he was a nice guy. Some of those guys are, I won't say it, but, you know,
yeah,
they're not very nice. Especially if you're on the PGA Tour and you're caddying at Q school, like, you know, you feel like you would just be, you know, don't talk to me. You know, I'm way better than you. But no, he was pretty cool. I think we had a rain delay at one point, and he's, like, playing poker with some guys. Like, dude's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's not a reason to play him. Side story. I'm just saying, like, I think he's extremely talented for that price at 7,700. I'd be willing to play him at 7,700 over, like, a Pat Perez or somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I think he's got it. So who you like down here? We're getting off the rails.
Yes, on a tangent. Just a couple more guys down here. I don't mind Ches. I've got some interest in him. He, like you said, he seems to play well at this time of the year, early on in the year. You know, he'll go on a little heater before he gets burnt out in March or April.
Yep, exactly.
Then I like Sung J M. I don't mind him. I've really got some interest in Dylan Fratelli. I think I always have interest in him. Now that he is officially on the PGA Tour, that's probably bad for my bankroll because I can play him all the time now, not just majors.
Mm-hmm.
But he has played. You have to look in different areas for his recent form because he's played some Euro events. I think he had a recent top 10 finish at Dunhill Links. So he's coming in with some good form. Statistically, he shows pretty well, especially in some categories like ball striking and off the tee, tee to green, things like that. So I do have a decent amount of interest in Fratelli. And then two other guys down here in this range. I like Danny Lee at 7,400. Just below. Again, he's pretty solid in a number of categories. Scores really well on par fours, and it's something that I'm weighing.
Yeah, I was gonna bring him
high.
up. I was gonna bring him up because he has played this event. Like, I mean, I think course history is important here, but it's for certain people. It appears, Danny Lee has had a ton of missed cuts at this event. But then if you look at his recent form, he's never played so well-rounded in his game that he has like the last 6 months or 5 months.
Yeah.
So I was interested in Danny Lee too, and shout out to Giant Beer, who's one of our members in the Slack chat. He's really good at digging into this stuff. He dug into Zach Johnson at one event last year and was really, really intriguing. So I might run a little bit of Danny Lee by him and see his thoughts, because he's one that I kind of want to play, but then his course history kind of scares you off. But he's never played this well, and if whether he's figured something out or he's turned the corner on his consistency, I think he would be a really sneaky play at 7,400 that I would want to be a part of.
Yeah. I agree. I'm right there with you. I like Danny Lee a lot, and when I played him, sparingly last year, it was on those times when he was doing pretty well. So I got some Danny Lee love there.
Yeah.
The last guy that I'm interested in this 7K range is Sam Ryder.
Oh, man.
Is that a good man?
I think he's going to be popular.
I think he will be too, but that might be something that I'm okay with. I think that his form in the fall swing is too strong to overlook.
Mm-hmm.
But, we say current form versus course history. He did make the cut last year. It's his only appearance, and he made the cut, but he didn't finish well. So,
Yeah. I think
how do you weigh those against one another,
Well, just from comparison, I don't know why I think it this way, but I view Sam Ryder and Kevin Tway as very similar type of players, but Sam Ryder's stats are extremely better. Mm-hmm. So Sam Ryder is always somewhat underpriced, and he's had some super good finishes. So yeah, I do like Sam Ryder, but oh man, it's almost like it's almost a price thing. Like 7,200, I think he should be closer to, he should at least be more expensive than Kevin Tway, in my opinion. Even though Kevin Tway just won, statistically and like consistency wise, he should be like 7,700 or 7,800. But yeah, I think Sam Ryder's a really strong play at 7,200. And even though it's a big field, I feel like the strength of field for like a Sam Ryder, he played in much stronger types of events at the end of last year. You think of like the Quicken Loans where Tiger, I think he played with Tiger in the third round or something like that. So he's played with some bigger competition. I feel like 7,200 is a pretty solid deal. So I'll be playing a good chunk of Sam Ryder. The guy just below him though, Joel Damon, I've kind of fizzled on him as kind of late in the year. So I'm not sure how you feel. He didn't play great here last year. He made the cut, but then he kind of fell back and finished 73rd. So probably don't want to spend too much time in the low sevens. But yeah, I think Sam Ryder's a really, really strong play. And outside of that, I'll probably start to drop down a little bit into the six.
Yeah, just one last thing on Damon that you mentioned. I think Damon is a good swerve candidate because he looks attractive statistically. I mean, he's ranked right up there with, in the first model I ran, he's 7th. And at that price, that's really attractive. But if you look at his recent form, those numbers are padded by the run that he went on.
Right.
In July, 5th, 2nd, 15th, 8th. After that, miscut 46, 26, 29, 69, 41, 37. I mean, nothing about that screams, top 10 in a model. Let's plug it in. Don't think about it.
Right.
I think that's an easy fade.
Yep. I agree. Last person I'll touch on, which is more of a fade than a play, but Brian Stewart. He was someone that, looking back at last year's results, I think he finished 4th. We touched on a little bit. He's coming off a bunch of miscuts, and looking at recent form or looking at course history for Brian Stewart. Let's see, he finished, like I said, 4th and then 45th. But at the Sony last year, he gained 7.4 strokes putting to finish 4th. So if you are looking at prior results, if you look at guys, I mean, he finished 5th and 6th back in 13 and 14, but again, he gained 7.5 strokes in 13. So he's one of those that if you are looking through your stats and looking at course history, I think Brian Stewart might be popular through the week. But he's one that I would suggest avoiding. He's one that I'm going to try to steer away from. So I don't know if you looked into him, but he was one that always jumps out at me as someone that might be a sleeper, but no, he's got too many red flags for me.
Yep, no, I didn't look at him at all.
Cool. Great. All right, let's get into the 6K, and then we'll get you guys out of here so you can go, tinker with some lineups. And of course, again, we'll be going live on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern to recap the podcast, talk about ownership projections, lineup construction, all the good stuff. Of course, giveaways and all that fun stuff too. So, Jacob, kick off the 6K. I'll follow your lead, and then we'll get these good people out of here.
All right, so I probably won't play anybody in the 6K just because, again, keep in mind I'm playing one lineup, and it will probably be fairly balanced to where I don't have to get down this far. But there are some names that I'm interested in that might sway me to go down there a little bit. And the first is Keith Mitchell at 6,900. I mean, statistically, he does pop off the page at you a little bit. His form during the fall swing was mediocre. He had 2 decent finishes on the CIMB and CJ Cup, but then he followed those up with not a great finish at Mayakoba and then a miscut at RSM. So keep that in mind. I mean, he's known as a bomber, so he might not be a great fit for this course. That being said, looking at his course history, his one appearance last year, he finished tied for 25th. So that's an interesting one. I'd like to hear what you say, because that's a case where he's on paper not a great fit, but he still performed at a decent rate. His form coming in is some good, some bad. So how do you choose between those?
You're still talking about Keith Mitchell, right?
Yes.
Let me pull up his last couple of events. I did see the 25th from last year. He is better statistically than I think even I probably realize. Like you think of him as a bomber and a scorer and everything like that, but generally speaking, man, he's actually a pretty good all-around player. Yeah, his recent results is a bit sketch. So kind of looking at the Sony. So last year He gained 2 strokes off the tee at the Sony, just under a stroke approach. Gained 3 strokes around the green, so that could be a little bit of a red flag. And then lost half a stroke putting. So I would probably lean recent form for Mr. Keith Mitchell. So, I mean, he's cheap enough. You can make it work. 6,900, I think, if he makes the cut, he's paying it off. But, yeah, I would lean the recent form side versus the course history off that one finish.
Okay. And then one other guy that I've got some interest in down here, and this is probably the last guy for me, is Troy Merritt. Gets no respect. I mean, he's down here with a bunch of, no names, with web.com rookies. He played last week at Tournament of the Champions. Really had a solid finish. Came 16th. He lost strokes approach both that week and at the RSM, where he finished tied for 25th. So that might be concerning, especially if we're leaning more on approach. He did have a 4th at the Safeway to open the fall swing. So I think the form is definitely there. I think that, coupled with his price, does make him very interesting. The one caveat I will say to that is he has terrible course history at Sony. Last 3 attempts there are all miscuts. So take that for what you will.
You got to be careful down in the 6K range, because there's always bad spots somewhere. It's statistically, it's like, he's not that great, but that's what you're getting as a 6K guy. Recent form, course history, whatever it is. So
yeah, so that's what I got.
Yeah. All right, so for me, down in the 6K range, there's only a few that I'm kind of eyeballing, and so one I wanted to point out, we have our stat cheat sheet up on the website, written by Mr. Chris Hollander, known as Undone RSG on Twitter. So one of the guys that I was eyeballing a little bit, and recent form doesn't look great, but I think he had a decent run late in the fall that could spill over here. And so I wanted to note, JJ Henry, he saw an uptick in his iron play from 0.3 strokes gained over his last 24 rounds. He bumped it up to 0.7 strokes gained over his last 12. So I think there's a little bit of an increase there with his irons. He's not the longest off the tee, but if he keeps it in play, I like that a decent bit. There's a few down here that, I can kind of see doing okay. The one that I'm probably most interested in is Mr. Rory Sabbatini. He's at 6,500, so super cheap. But I don't know if you had looked at him at all. I know it's still early, it's Monday, but of all the names down here, there's some web.com guys. One of them's Carlos Ortiz. I'm a little interested in him. I can talk about here in a second. But Rory Sabbatini, he had a super good stretch last year. I think he had like 8 made cuts in a row in the middle of the year. No, I take that back. He had like 12 made cuts in a row. Starting at the Sony, he finished 32nd actually. So I like a little bit of Rory Sabbatini. If you have to dip that low, I think he's actually a decent play. And then the last one that I'll mention is Carlos Ortiz. I don't think anyone will play him. He was kind of a hot topic coming off the web.com tour. His last 3 events were miscuts, but looking at his stats off the tee and green regulation, in 3 of those before the RSM, he played terrible at the RSM, so I'm kind of scratching that. He gained, 3, 2.4 and 3.7 green regulation on the field in those 3 starts, and off the tee, as far as fairways, gained 3, 4.2, and 0.3. So, he seems like he hits it straight enough. If he can just make some putts and scramble decently, I feel like he has a decent chance. It should be really low owned. So, for GVPs, I think he's a really strong play that should go overlooked.
Interesting.
Yeah, man. I try to keep in mind the guys that I liked only a few months ago, because golf can change, but they can snap back after like a 2-month break. So I like those guys. But yeah, I mean, there's some decent names down the 6K. I'll probably mix and match a little bit in GPPs to get a variety. But like we talked about early on, I think the mid range is so stacked. I mean, it's a pretty strong field. That's probably why you see the odds so long. But yeah, I really like the mid range dropping down from the 10K and staying kind of above the $7,200 number.
Yep, that's most likely the way I'll be going. But you have piqued my interest in some 6K options that would open up a little more.
All right, well, check it out, and yeah, that'll probably do it for us. But of course, we'll be back on Wednesday, like we mentioned, the Twitch live stream, twitch.tv/Redkacheek. Giving away the Ping hybrid. That'll be fun, Jacob. Little
excited
spin wheel.
for that.
Yeah. So that'll be good. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. Definitely check us out on iTunes and leave us a review. Wherever you download the podcast, leave us a rating and a review. That definitely helps. And follow us on, there's free memberships on the website. So we have plenty of good free content this season, along with premium content. But you can check out plenty of good stuff for showdowns, stat cheat sheets, all kinds of stuff. And completely free on the website. Check out the live stream Wednesday. You can follow me on Twitter at Redkacheek, and we'll be tweeting out those links as the week goes on. You can follow Jacob as well at JkrayASU on Twitter. And of course, guys, hit us up anytime you have questions. We're looking forward to a really fun week at the Sony. Finally got a cut event and a decent field. We can mix and match and actually build some solid lineups and feel decent about it, at least going into Thursday morning. So, Jacob, you have anything else for the peoples?
No. I think you've rounded it out pretty well. Make sure to get those follows in and make sure you're there on Wednesday for the Ping giveaway.
Yep, exactly. Ping hybrid giveaway. It's going to pain me when I have to ship it, but we have to do what we have to do to please the other people that support the podcast. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's podcast for the Sony Open. We'll see you on Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. Until then, good luck with your lineups and your research.